The night was cold and quiet. The wind moved through the tall pine trees behind Ethan's house, making a low whispering sound. The world seemed calm, almost too calm. Ethan sat in his small living room, sipping coffee and staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The light from the screen was the only brightness in the dark room. It was just another lonely night for him. Ethan lived alone at the edge of the forest, far from the city noise. He liked the peace, the stillness. After his parents passed away, he had chosen this place to escape the busy world. The nights were long, but he had grown used to the silence. But that night, something felt different. Around midnight, the air outside began to hum. At first, Ethan thought it was just the wind again, maybe the storm that had been predicted earlier. But then he heard a low sound, deep and smooth like a big machine far away. The walls of his wooden cabin vibrated slightly. Ethan stood up, frowning. He looked toward the window. A soft light flickered across the forest, moving slowly behind the trees. It wasn't lightning, it was something else. The light changed colors from blue to green, then back to white. He whispered to himself, "What the hell is that?" Then it stopped. The humming faded and the light vanished. Everything went quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. This time it felt wrong. Ethan waited for a minute, holding his breath. His heart began to beat faster, and then knock, 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 3 soft knocks on his front door. Ethan froze. His mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Coffee spilled across the wooden boards, but he didn't move. The sound came again, knock, knock. Softer this time, but real. "Who's there?" Ethan called out, his voice shaking. No answer. He reached for the flashlight on the shelf, his fingers trembling. He moved slowly to the door. The sound of his own breathing was loud in the silence. He looked through the small window beside the door but saw nothing. Only darkness. He hesitated. Maybe it was a lost traveler, maybe an animal, or maybe a prank. But then he heard something small, like a sob, a child's voice. "Please, help me." Ethan's chest tightened. He quickly unlocked the door and opened it a little. Cold air rushed in. Outside stood a small figure. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. But she was unlike any child he had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly like silver under the moonlight. Her eyes were large and shining with no whites, only deep shifting blue. Her hair floated slightly as if she were underwater. She looked up at him, shaking. "Please help me," she whispered again. "My mom, she can't breathe." Ethan's mind went blank. He stared, unable to speak. What did you say?" he finally asked. "My mom," she repeated. "She can't breathe. Please, help." Her voice was clear, soft, but filled with fear. Ethan blinked, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but she's dying." Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and tears, real, shining tears, rolled down her silver cheeks. Ethan stepped out onto the porch. "Where is she?" The girl pointed toward the forest. "There," she said, her small hand trembling. "In the crash. Crash?" he repeated, confused. She nodded quickly. "Please hurry." Ethan looked out into the dark woods. He could see a faint green glow between the trees, like fog lit from inside. He grabbed his jacket and the flashlight. "Okay," he said, voice firming. "Show me." The girl turned and started running toward the trees. Ethan followed, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The night was silent except for their footsteps and the sound of his breath. As they moved deeper into the woods, Ethan noticed something strange, a thin trail on the ground. Drops of glowing green liquid. It shimmered faintly under the light. He crouched down and touched one drop with his finger. It was warm. The little girl turned back. "Don't touch it," she said quickly. "It's from the ship." "The ship?" Ethan asked, confused. But before she could answer, they reached a small clearing. Ethan stopped and stared. A metallic object lay half buried in the ground, smoking slightly. It looked like a pod about the size of a car, its surface dented and burnt. Blue light blinked weakly from cracks along its side. Steam hissed out from a hole. "That's your ship?" Ethan whispered. The girl nodded. "We were flying. Then we fell." Ethan felt his heart race. This was impossible. He was standing in front of something that couldn't exist, yet it was real. The girl ran to the broken craft. "Mama!" she cried. Ethan followed, shining the flashlight inside. His mouth fell open. Inside lay a woman, taller than the girl, but with the same silver skin and glowing eyes. Her chest moved up and down slowly as if breathing was painful. She was covered in strange marks, burns, cuts, maybe from the crash. Leary, that was what the little girl called herself, knelt beside the woman, holding her hand. "She can't breathe," Leary said again, tears in her voice. "Please help her." Ethan looked at the alien woman, then at the girl. He didn't know what to do. She wasn't human, but she looked so helpless, so alive. He swallowed hard. "All right," he said softly. "We'll get her to my house. Come on." He crawled halfway into the ship, hooked his arms under the woman's shoulders, and carefully pulled her out. She was light, too light, almost like air. Her skin was cool to the touch. Leary helped, guiding his steps. "Careful, she can't stay out too long," she said urgently. Ethan didn't ask what that meant. He just carried her. Every step back through the forest felt heavy, unreal. His heart pounded with fear and confusion. When they reached the edge of the trees, Ethan glanced up at the sky. It was dark again, no strange lights now, only stars. But he felt something watching them from far away. Inside his house, Ethan laid the woman on the couch. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. "Do you have air?" Leary asked quickly. "Oxygen?" Ethan blinked. I have a tank. For welding." "Bring it," she said. He ran to the garage, grabbed the small oxygen tank, and returned. Leary took the mask and placed it over her mother's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly her breathing steadied, still weak but better. Leary looked up at Ethan, her glowing eyes filled with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan sat down, still shaking. He looked at her soft silver skin, her strange beauty, her fear, and tried to speak. "You're not human, are you?" Leary shook her head. "No." Ethan rubbed his forehead, trying to process. "And you crashed in here?" "Yes. Is anyone else coming? Someone to help you?" She hesitated. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "No, they will come to hurt us." Ethan stared at her, his heart sinking. "Who will?" Her eyes turned darker blue, full of fear. "The hunters." Before he could ask more, the lights in the house flickered. The ground trembled slightly. Leary looked toward the window, terrified. "They found us," she said softly. Outside in the far distance, a red light glowed between the trees. Ethan slowly turned off the flashlight. His pulse thundered in his ears. The little alien girl took his hand. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let them take my mom." The human nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "I won't." Outside, the red light grew brighter, moving closer through the woods, and the night was no longer silent. The night grew heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. Ethan's small house sat in the middle of darkness, surrounded by tall trees that now seemed alive. The red light outside blinked once, then vanished between the branches, only to reappear closer, brighter, like an eye searching the woods. Leary clung to her mother's side. The woman still lay weak on the couch, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Her silver skin had lost most of its glow. Ethan could see faint lines on her face that looked like cracks, as if she were made of delicate glass. "What are those lights?" he whispered. Leary's eyes widened. "The hunters," she said. "They followed us from the sky." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Hunters? What do they want?" "They kill my kind," she said quietly. "They want my mom dead because she escaped." Ethan didn't know what to say. This wasn't a dream. The strange ship, the glowing girl, the woman who couldn't breathe, all of it was real. And now something was coming for them. He grabbed his flashlight again and peeked through the curtain. Nothing. Only trees. But deep between them he thought he saw movement. Tall shapes gliding soundlessly. He turned to Leary. "We can't stay here," he whispered. "They'll find the crash site. If they follow the trail, they'll find this place too." Leary nodded quickly, wiping her glowing tears. "We must hide her. Please help me carry her." Ethan didn't hesitate. Together they lifted the alien woman carefully. She was light, lighter than air almost. Her breathing made a soft whistling sound like wind through glass. They stepped outside into the cold night. The forest loomed in silence except for the faint hum that now returned, low, steady, like a machine searching. "Where?" Ethan asked. "Back to the ship," Leary said. "There's something there that can help her breathe longer." "I couldn't carry it alone." Ethan nodded. His hands were shaking, but he didn't stop. They moved through the dark, following the faint green trail of glowing liquid once again. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The air felt heavy, electric. Every few seconds, Ethan thought he heard a distant metallic click, like something stepping through the trees behind them. When they reached the clearing, the small ship still smoked softly. The strange blue lights along its surface flickered weakly. Ethan placed the alien woman gently beside it. "What do you need?" he asked. Leary crawled inside the ship, digging through debris and strange metal pieces. Ethan watched her small hands glow as she searched. "It's a sphere," she said breathlessly. "A blue sphere. It makes her air." Ethan helped her look. He moved broken panels, strange wires that looked alive, and found something half buried under a seat. A cracked crystal orb, still glowing faintly. Inside it, a blue mist swirled slowly. "Is this it?" he asked. Leary's eyes lit up. "Yes," she took it gently. "But it's broken." She pressed it against her mother's chest. For a moment, the blue mist grew brighter, but then dimmed again. Leary's face fell. "It doesn't work," she whispered. Ethan felt helpless. "Can we fix it?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't know how." "Only my mom knows." The woman opened her eyes weakly. Her voice was soft, distant, musical. "Leary, don't cry. Mom." Leary held her hand tightly. The woman looked at Ethan, her eyes faint but filled with warmth. "Human," she said. "You helped us." Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't understand what's happening, but I'll try to help again." She tried to smile. "My name is Aaron. The air here burns us. Your world's breath is heavy." Leary pressed her face against her mother's shoulder. "Don't talk, Mama. Please rest." Ethan looked around nervously. The forest wasn't quiet anymore. Somewhere far away, he could hear a mechanical hum that was getting louder. He could almost feel the vibrations under his boots. "Leary," he said quickly, "we can't stay out here. We'll take her back. We'll find a way." She hesitated. "They will find us if we go back. Then we'll hide," Ethan said firmly. "I promise." They carried Aaron again, moving fast but carefully. The red light appeared again in the distance, cutting through the trees like a beam. "They're close," Leary whispered, panicking. "Keep moving," Ethan said. "Don't look back." They reached the house just as the first red beam swept over the forest clearing. Ethan quickly shut the door and turned off every light. For a few seconds, they stood in silence, listening. A strange sound filled the air, like whispering voices made of metal. It grew louder, closer. Then there was a click at the back of the house. Ethan froze. "They're here," he mouthed. He motioned Leary toward the basement. They carried Aaron down the narrow wooden stairs. The basement was cold, filled with old tools, boxes, and a generator that hadn't been used in years. "Stay here," Ethan said softly. "Don't make a sound," Leary nodded. Holding her mother close, Ethan went back upstairs, grabbed his hunting rifle, an old, rusty one he hadn't used in years, and stood by the door. Outside, footsteps slow, careful, heavy, then a voice, not human. A deep rattling sound that made the walls vibrate. It spoke in short bursts, a language of sharp clicks and tones. Ethan's hand tightened on the rifle. He peeked through the window. Something stood in the yard, tall, thin, wrapped in dark armor that shimmered like oil. Its head was smooth, with no face and only a glowing red circle in the middle. It turned slowly, scanning the house. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he thought it might give him away. Then, another one appeared beside it. They communicated in low sounds, and one raised its arm. A beam of red light passed over the house again. Ethan ducked. The beam moved past the window, then stopped. He held his breath. The light hovered, then drifted away. The sound of their footsteps faded into the forest. He waited another full minute before moving. When he returned to the basement, Leary was kneeling beside her mother, whispering softly in her language, words that sounded like music. "Are they gone?" she asked. "For now," Ethan said. Aaron's breathing had grown weaker. Leary's hands glowed brighter as she touched her mother's chest, trying to keep her alive. "She needs the crystal fixed," Leary said, crying. "Without it, she'll die." Ethan sat on the floor, running his hand through his hair. He had no idea how to fix alien technology, but he couldn't just watch her die. He looked at the cracked sphere lying beside them. Inside, the blue mist still moved weakly. He picked it up carefully. "Maybe I can seal it," he said. "If it's just cracked, maybe glue or tape." Leary looked up at him, desperate. "Try, please." Ethan worked quietly, cleaning the edges of the broken crystal. His hands were shaking, but he focused. He found a tube of industrial glue and a roll of tape from a toolbox. It was clumsy work, not science, just hope. When he was done, he handed it back. Here, it might not work, but Leary pressed it against her mother's chest again. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the blue mist inside began to swirl faster. Erin's chest lifted, her eyes opened wide, glowing softly. She breathed in, slow and deep. Leary gasped and hugged her. Mama! Erin looked at Ethan, weak but smiling. You fixed it, she whispered. Ethan exhaled shakily. Not sure how long it'll hold, but she's okay for now. Then a sharp noise from outside and a sudden boom shook the house. The lights flickered. Ethan and Leary both looked up. They're back, Leary said in fear. Erin whispered weakly. They will not stop until we are dead. Ethan stood up, his eyes hard now. Then they'll have to get through me first. The house trembled again as a red glow spread through the forest, and in that trembling silence, Ethan realized his quiet life was gone. Something far bigger than he ever imagined had begun. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The house shook again just before dawn, and then the sound faded into silence. The red light in the forest finally disappeared, but Ethan knew it wasn't over. He sat by the basement door holding his old rifle tight. His hands were trembling and his eyes felt dry. He had never felt so tired, or so alive. Downstairs, Leary sat beside her mother, whispering softly. Ethan could hear her voice like small notes of music. Sometimes he thought he could almost understand her, words about love, fear, and stars. When the first gray light of morning entered through the window, Ethan went down the stairs. The air in the basement was cold and smelled of dust. Leary looked up at him with tired eyes. Her silver skin was dimmer now, her glow almost gone. She's still breathing, Leary said softly, but weaker. Ethan knelt beside Erin. Her chest rose and fell slowly, the sound of her breath rough and dry. The patched-up crystal on her chest flickered weakly, like a dying light bulb. She needs more air, Ethan said, looking at the small tank beside her. It was almost empty. If she can't breathe our air, maybe I can make something. Maybe I can... He stopped. His brain raced. He had no idea how alien lungs worked. He didn't even know if she had lungs. Leary was watching him with wide eyes. You can help her. You fixed the crystal before. That was just luck, Ethan admitted. But I'll try again. He moved to his garage and opened every cabinet. Wires, old car parts, a few oxygen tubes from his welding kit. Nothing close to alien technology. But then he saw something useful. A small medical oxygen tank from when his father had been sick years ago. It still had half a tank left. He dragged it inside, connecting a thin tube to it. We'll try this first, he said. Leary watched as he carefully placed the mask near Erin's face. The woman's breathing steadied for a moment, then she coughed, a strange metallic sound. Her eyes opened weakly. Too heavy, she whispered. Leary looked at Ethan. She said it burns. Ethan frowned. Oxygen burns her? Yes, it's too much for her kind. He thought for a second. So she needs a mix, not pure oxygen. He went to the kitchen and grabbed a few empty jars, bottles, and tubes. He remembered reading once about divers and breathing gases. Maybe he could make something similar. He didn't know what he was doing, but he didn't stop. Leary watched every move, her small hands clutching her mother's arm. What if you can't help her? She whispered. Ethan looked at her and forced a small smile. Then we keep trying until we can. He connected tubes, mixed air from the tank with normal room air, and created a slow flow through a wet cloth, hoping it might make it easier to breathe. When he placed it near Erin's face, her body relaxed slightly. Leary's eyes lit up. It's working. Ethan sighed in relief. At least for now. Erin opened her eyes again and looked at him. Her voice was faint but steady this time. You risk your life for strangers, she said. Ethan shrugged. You're not strangers anymore. For the first time, Erin smiled. Small, tired, but real. But the peace didn't last. Outside, something moved. The floorboards creaked softly above them. Ethan froze. He looked at Leary and put a finger to his lips. Thud. Another step, then silence. He slowly climbed the stairs, his rifle ready. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wooden floor. Everything looked calm until he saw it. The front door was slightly open. He stepped closer, his pulse racing. On the porch lay a piece of metal, dark, smooth, and sharp-edged. It was glowing faint red, still warm. Not human-made, he looked around. The forest was still. The birds were silent. Then from somewhere behind the trees came a faint metallic hum. The same one from last night. "They're still searching," Ethan whispered. He closed the door quickly and blocked it with a chair. He turned back to the basement. "We need to move her soon," he said. "They'll come back," Leary shook her head. "She can't travel far." "Not yet." Ethan rubbed his face. He was running out of time and ideas. He sat beside Oren again. "You said the air here burns you. Is there any way to fix your breathing thing?" "That crystal?" Aaron's eyes flickered open. "The breath crystal," she said slowly. "It's more than air. It keeps our life energy. When it breaks, our body forgets how to live." Ethan didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. "Can it be repaired?" "Maybe," she whispered. "If we had energy from the ship." Ethan stood up immediately. "Then I'll get it," Leary gasped. "You can't." "The hunters will find you." "Then I'll move fast," he said. "Show me what I need to look for." Leary hesitated, then pulled out a small square object from her bag. It was smooth, glowing faintly blue with strange symbols on it. "This will open the ship's core," she said. "It's dangerous. If the hunters come, hide." "Promise me," Ethan nodded. "I promise." He took the device, grabbed his jacket, and stepped outside. The air was cold and still. The morning light touched the tops of the trees, turning them golden. He moved quietly through the forest path, every sound making him flinch. When he reached the clearing, the ship looked worse than before. Smoke rose from its side, and the soil around it was black and glassy. He crouched near the entrance. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Using the blue device, he touched a panel. It opened with a hiss. Inside, everything was silent. Broken screens, melted wires, and faint blue light. He moved carefully until he found a round pod glowing softly. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "That must be it," he whispered. He reached for it. Suddenly, the air behind him shimmered, and a shadow moved. Ethan turned fast. A tall shape stood at the edge of the clearing. Dark, armored, its face glowing red. A hunter. It hadn't seen him yet. It was scanning the ship slowly, moving with strange insect-like grace. Ethan's heart pounded. He held his breath and stayed completely still. The device in his hand pulsed faintly with light, and the hunter's head turned toward it. The red light fixed on him. Ethan ran. The ground shook behind him as the creature leaped forward, its metal feet crushing branches. A beam of red light shot past him, hitting a tree and setting it on fire. He ran faster, clutching the small power cord to his chest. He could hear the creature's steps getting closer. Then, in silence, he looked back. The hunter was gone. No, not gone. Hiding, watching. Ethan didn't stop to think. He sprinted all the way home, bursting through the door, gasping for breath. Leary ran to him. "You're alive!" He handed her the glowing core. "Use it. Now." Together, they connected it to the breath crystal. The blue mist inside brightened instantly, swirling like a storm. Aaron gasped, her whole body glowing with soft silver light. Leary smiled through her tears. "It worked." Aaron opened her eyes, stronger now. She looked at Ethan, her voice soft but steady. "You risked your life for us again, why?" Ethan sat down on the floor, exhausted. "Because it's what humans do, but outside, deep in the forest." The red light flared once more. The hunter had found their scent. The real fight was about to begin. The sun had barely climbed above the trees, but the light felt weak and are almost afraid to touch the ground. The air was heavy with the smell of smoke from the forest. Somewhere deep among the shadows, something moved. Ethan stood by the window with his rifle staring into the woods. His body was tired, but his mind wouldn't rest. Every sound made his heart race. The memory of the hunter's red light chasing him through the trees still burned behind his eyes. Down in the basement, Aaron was breathing more easily now. The repaired crystal glowed bright blue again, its light pulsing softly with her heartbeat. Leary sat beside her mother, holding her hand. Her glow had returned too, faint but warm, like moonlight on water. Ethan looked down at them and whispered, "They're still out there." Leary raised her head. "I can feel them," she said softly. "They are near," Ethan frowned. "Feel them?" She nodded. "The hunters don't speak the way you do. They send waves through the air. My kind can sense them." It feels like fire under the skin. Ethan shivered. Then they already know we're here. No, Leary said, her eyes glowing brighter. Not yet. The ship hides us a little. But they're searching. When the red light finds this place, they'll come. Ethan walked to the kitchen window and peered out. The forest looked calm, too calm. No birds, no wind, just silence. He turned to her. Then we need a plan. A few hours later, Ethan started preparing. He moved old boxes to block the windows, turned off every light, and gathered anything that could be used as a weapon. A wrench, a crowbar, even kitchen knives. It wasn't much, but it was something. Leary watched him quietly. You fight for us, she said. But they are not like you. They don't stop. Ethan looked at her. Then they picked the wrong house. She didn't understand the joke, but she smiled weakly. As the afternoon faded, a strange hum filled the air again. Low at first, then louder, steady and deep like thunder that never ended. The sound made the windows shake. Ethan grabbed his rifle. They're here, he said. Leary ran to the basement stairs. Stay quiet. Protect my mom. Ethan moved to the front door, his pulse racing. The hum grew until it became a vibration in the floor. Then suddenly it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Then, boom. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ethan opened the curtain a little. His eyes widened. Two large shapes stood at the edge of the trees, tall, thin, armored in dark metal that shimmered red. Their faces were smooth, without mouths or eyes. Only one glowing red circle in the center. Each carried something that looked like a long metal spear, but the ends burned with crimson light. Leary's voice trembled behind him. Hunters, Ethan whispered. What do they want? They kill what they fear, she said. My mother knows something they want hidden. She escaped their world. The ground shook again as one of the hunters took a step forward. The other raised its spear and aimed it toward the crashed ship hidden in the forest. A red beam shot out, slicing through the trees. The ship exploded with a flash of blue light. Leary screamed. No, that was our ship. Ethan turned quickly. Get down! The shockwave hit the cabin, shaking it hard. Windows shattered. Flames flickered through the forest. When the noise faded, only smoke and red light remained. Ethan's ears rang. He looked at Leary. We have to move her now. Leary helped him lift her mother. Erin was awake now, but weak. Her voice was soft. You cannot fight them, she said. They see everything. They hear your fear. Ethan shook his head. Then I'll make sure they hear something else, and courage. He carried Erin down into the basement. Leary followed, closing the door behind them. Above them, the sound of heavy steps echoed. The hunters were outside the house. The floor creaked with each metallic step. Ethan whispered, Stay quiet. The red light passed across the windows, scanning. Then came a loud thud, the front door being hit, another thud. Then a hiss. Then the sound of metal slicing wood. They were cutting through. Leary held her mother close. They're coming, she whispered. Ethan's mind raced. He looked around the basement, pipes, tools, and the old generator. He had an idea. He pulled open the generator's fuel valve and grabbed a matchbox. If they come down here, we light this and get out the back. Leary's eyes widened. That will burn your home, Ethan nodded. Better the house burns than you. The door upstairs burst open with a crash. The hunter's footsteps echoed across the floor. Every sound made Ethan's stomach tighten. He could hear their metallic voices now, cold, mechanical, full of clicks and hisses. They were speaking to each other, searching. One of them moved to the basement door. The wooden steps creaked as it began to descend. Ethan held the match. His hand shook. The red glow appeared through the cracks in the floorboards. Leary whispered something in her language. A prayer, maybe. Erin placed her hand weakly on Ethan's arm. Don't die for us, she said. Ethan looked at her. Too late for that. The first hunter reached the bottom of the stairs. Its glowing red eye turned toward them. Ethan lit the match. The flame flickered, small, bright, fragile. He held it near the fuel, but before he dropped it, the air suddenly filled with blue light. Erin was standing, her eyes open wide, glowing brighter than before. The breath crystal on her chest shone like a star. Enough, she said in a voice that didn't sound human. The hunter stopped moving. The red light flickered, confused. Erin raised her hand. The crystal flared. A wave of blue energy burst out, hitting the hunter and throwing it back up the stairs. The ground shook. Sparks flew. Ethan shielded his eyes. The second hunter roared, a deep, terrible sound, and then stormed through the wall. But Erin turned toward it, her body glowing brighter, her voice echoing like thunder. "Go back," she commanded. Another pulse of blue energy exploded from her chest. The creature screamed and fell to the floor, its armor cracking apart. The house trembled again and the walls began to splinter. Ethan grabbed Leary and pulled her behind him. "Erin, stop! You'll destroy everything!" But Erin didn't stop. The blue light grew so bright that it filled the whole room, shining through every wall, every shadow. Then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was still. The basement was filled with smoke and dust. The hunters were gone, melted metal on the floor like shadows burned into stone. Erin lay collapsed on the ground, her glow fading fast. The breath crystal was cracked again, its light flickering weakly. Leary screamed and ran to her. "Mama!" Ethan rushed forward, kneeling beside them. Erin opened her eyes slowly, barely breathing. "They are gone." "For now," she whispered. "You saved us," Ethan said. Erin smiled faintly. "No, you saved us. Humans still have heart." Then she went still, her eyes closing. The crystal's light dimmed to nothing. Leary sobbed quietly, her tears glowing blue as they fell onto her mother's hands. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll fix it," he said softly. "We'll find a way." But deep in the forest, far beyond the smoke, a distant red glow blinked to life again, brighter, angrier, and the hum returned. The hunters were not finished. The house smelled of smoke and burned metal. The morning sun crept through broken windows, painting thin lines of gold across the floor. Ethan sat in the silence, staring at what was left of the two hunters, melted armor and black dust. His hands were still shaking. His heart was still running wild inside his chest. Leary sat beside her mother's body. Erin was still, her silver skin pale like glass. The blue crystal on her chest was dark now, no longer glowing. Leary's small hands pressed against it, trying again and again to make it shine, but nothing happened. "She's gone," Leary whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't feel her anymore." Ethan knelt beside her. "I'm sorry, Leary, I tried." She shook her head. "It's not your fault. She used all her power to save us." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the wind through broken walls filled the silence. Finally, Leary looked at him. "You shouldn't have helped us," she said softly. "Now they'll come for you too." Ethan smiled weakly. "I don't care." She stared at him with confusion. "Why? You don't even know us." Ethan looked down at the floor, his thoughts heavy. "Because once, someone helped me when no one else would. It's what people should do, no matter who needs it." Leary's glowing eyes softened. "My mother would have liked you," she said. Ethan nodded slowly. "She already did." Hours passed. Ethan buried Erin in the small clearing behind his cabin, under a large pine tree. The ground was still damp from the morning dew and the air smelled like rain. He didn't have flowers, so he placed smooth stones on the grave, small round ones from the stream nearby. Leary stood beside him, quiet, holding the now dark breath crystal in her hands. Her tears glowed faintly blue like tiny stars falling to the ground. "She wanted peace," Leary said. "That's why she came to your world." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "Peace?" "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "She was a scientist on our planet. But when the war started, the leaders began to use her work to make weapons. She ran away with me, but the hunters followed us. They were sent to erase anyone who knew the truth." Ethan frowned. "What truth?" Leary looked up at the sky. "That humans were never supposed to be alone." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" Leary held the crystal tightly, as if afraid it might vanish. "Our people knew your world long ago. We watched humans grow, learn, build. My mother said humans had something we lost, something strong but invisible. She called it heart." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Heart?" Leary nodded. "When she saw your world was close enough to reach, she wanted to send a message. She believed if humans and my kind worked together, both could survive the coming darkness." Ethan's voice was low. "Darkness?" "Yes," she said softly. "Something is spreading across the stars. A hunger that eats everything alive. It destroyed many worlds. The hunters serve it. They're not alive like us, and they're built, controlled, used. My mother wanted to warn you before it came here." Ethan stared at her, his heart sinking. "You're saying it's coming to Earth?" Leary nodded. "It will. The hunters were only the beginning. For a long time, Ethan said nothing. The wind rustled the trees and the shadows of clouds drifted across the clearing. Finally, he spoke. "Then we have to finish what your mother started." Leary looked up, her eyes wide. "Finish?" "Yes," Ethan said firmly. "You said she was trying to send a message to humans. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can warn someone, scientists, the military, anyone who'll listen." Leary shook her head sadly. "They won't believe you. Humans fear what they don't understand." Ethan gave a small smile. "Then we'll make them understand." They returned to the ruined ship. Most of it was burned, but some parts still glowed faintly. Leary climbed inside, her movements careful but quick. She seemed to know exactly what she was doing. Ethan followed, watching as she pulled open a small compartment and took out a thin metal cube covered in symbols. "This is her memory core," she explained. "It holds her thoughts, her plans, everything she knew." Ethan looked at it closely. "Can we use it?" Leary hesitated. "Maybe, but it needs power." He thought for a moment. "The generator in my garage. It still works." They carried the cube back to the cabin and set it on the table. The old generator coughed to life with a growl, sending a weak electric hum through the wire Ethan had connected. The cube flickered, then began to glow softly. Suddenly, a faint image appeared above it. A hologram of Aaron. She looked alive again, her silver glow calm and soft. Leary gasped. "Mama!" Aaron's voice was gentle, echoing through the room. "If you are hearing this, then I am gone." Ethan's throat tightened. "I knew this might happen," the message continued. "The hunters never stop. But if my daughter lives, then hope still lives. Leary, my child, you must finish my work. The humans must know. Tell them that the sky will burn, and that their kindness is their greatest weapon." Leary reached out to touch the light, but her fingers passed through it. The image began to fade. Aaron's last words were soft, but they filled the room. "Trust the human heart." Then the cube went dark. Ethan sat back, speechless. Leary wiped her glowing tears. "She believed in you," she said quietly. He looked at the cube again, his face pale but determined. "Then I won't waste her faith." That night, Ethan and Leary worked together. They cleaned the house, covered the windows again, and built a new hiding place in the basement. Using parts from the ship, Ethan built a small transmitter, crude but powerful enough to send a signal. Leary helped by showing him symbols and how to connect the alien circuits. She didn't need to speak much. Her hands knew the work by heart. While they worked, she spoke softly. "My people used to think humans were dangerous because you fight each other. But my mother said your fighting is different. You fight because you care, because you love." Ethan nodded, twisting wires together. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Sometimes we just need a reason to fight for the right thing." The transmitter hummed, its lights turning from red to green. Leary smiled for the first time since her mother's death. "It's ready," she said. Ethan stepped back. "Then let's send her message." She pressed her hand on the panel. The transmitter glowed brighter, and a soft beam of light shot into the night sky. It pulsed, sending the message, a mix of alien symbols and human code, toward the stars. Ethan looked up through the broken roof and whispered, "Let's hope someone listens." Hours later, the light faded. Leary sat quietly, her hands glowing softly in the dark. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but proud. "We did it," he said. Leary nodded, but her face was still worried. "It's only the beginning," she whispered. "When they hear her message, the hunters will return, and they won't come alone." Ethan looked toward the forest. In the distance, thunder rolled across the sky, low and long. He didn't know if it was weather or something else. But he did know one thing. He wouldn't run this time. The night air was heavy again. The forest was silent, too silent, like everything alive was holding its breath. Ethan sat outside his broken cabin, staring at the stars. The transmitter they built with Leary still blinked faint green beside him, sending faint pulses of light into the dark sky. Each flash carried Aaron's final message, a warning for humanity and a hope for peace. But Ethan's gut told him something was wrong. He could feel it, the stillness before a storm, the kind that made animals hide. Leary stepped out quietly. Her silver skin glowed faintly blue in the moonlight. She was wearing a blanket Ethan had given her, wrapped around her small shoulders. Her eyes looked tired but calm. "Do you think someone heard us?" she asked. Ethan didn't look away from the sky. "I hope so." but I don't think we'll live long enough to know. Leary walked closer and sat beside him. They're coming, aren't they? Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, the hunters won't stop. You said it yourself. And now that the message is sent, they'll come to erase everything. The wind picked up. It carried a faint hum, deep, distant but growing louder. Leary's hand trembled. That sound. I know it. Ethan stood up and looked toward the forest. Red light flashed far away, moving between the trees like fireflies made of anger. Get inside, he said quickly. Now. By the time the first red beam cut through the trees, the cabin lights were out. Ethan had already sealed the doors and windows with metal sheets and stacked furniture as barricades. He checked his rifle, loaded every bullet he had left, and set up makeshift traps near the doors, fuel lines, wires, and sharp metal pieces from the wrecked ship. Down in the basement, Leary sat beside the transmitter. The glow from the cube, so her mother's memory quickened, lit her small face. She held it close to her chest, whispering softly in her own language. Ethan came down, sweat on his forehead. They're close, he said. When I tell you hide behind the wall and don't move. No matter what happens, you stay there. Leary looked up, her eyes wide. You can't fight them alone. Ethan smiled faintly. I'm not alone. You're here. And I've got your mom's courage. Leary's lips trembled, but she nodded. The hum outside turned into a roar. The ground vibrated and a dark shadow passed across the window. Ethan looked out and saw it. A large black ship hovering above the forest, its body pulsing with red light. Dozens of smaller hunters dropped from it, landing silently around the cabin. They moved like wolves surrounding their prey. Here we go, Ethan muttered. The first beam hit the house. A searing line of red that split the air. Wood exploded. The walls shook. Ethan fired back through the smoke, hitting one of the hunters square in the chest. It staggered, sparks flying from its armor. Then fell with a heavy crash. The others hissed in unison, a sound that chilled his blood. He ran to another window and fired again, then ducked as a red blast tore through the wall behind him. The heat was unbearable. Downstairs, Leary covered her ears, her small body shaking as the explosions above grew louder. The memory cube flickered. Aaron's voice, faint, ghost-like, whispered through the static. Be strong, my child. Protect the light. Leary looked up, her tears glowing. Mama. She pressed her hands to the cube. The glow spread up her arms, brightening her whole body until she shimmered like a star. I won't let them take it, she whispered. Upstairs, Ethan was running out of ammo. He ducked behind a fallen beam and reloaded with shaking hands. Smoke filled the air, and the red light from outside painted everything in blood. One hunter broke through the door. Ethan swung a metal pipe, hitting its head with all his strength. The creature stumbled but didn't fall. Its hand shot forward, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him off the ground. Ethan gasped for air. The red eye of the hunter glared into his face, reflecting his fear. Then, suddenly, a flash of blue light filled the room. The hunter dropped him and stepped back, screeching. Leary stood in the doorway, glowing like her mother once had. The crystal in her hand pulsed with energy, brighter than before. Leave him, she shouted, her voice echoing like thunder. The hunter froze, as if the command itself heard it, then exploded into pieces of burning metal. Ethan fell to the floor, coughing. Leary, I told you to stay. She shook her head fiercely. I'm not hiding anymore. The blue light from her hand spread, wrapping around her like a living shield. She looked smaller than ever, yet stronger, almost holy. The rest of the hunters outside stopped moving. For a moment, the forest was silent again. Then their leader stepped forward. Taller, darker, its armor black as night. The red glow in its chest pulsed slowly like a heartbeat of rage. Its voice was deep and metallic. Child of Aaron, surrender. The message dies with you. Leary's eyes glowed brighter. My mother's message will never die. The leader raised its hand. A storm of red beams shot toward her, but the blue light around her flared, blocking them all. Sparks flew as red met blue, light clashing against light. The sound shook the ground. Ethan grabbed his rifle again and fired at the leader. The bullets bounced off its armor, but it turned its attention toward him instead. Human, it growled. You protect our enemy. Ethan smirked, blood on his lip. You're not the first monster to say that to me. The hunter lunged forward, smashing through the wall. Ethan jumped aside just in time, rolling on the floor and grabbing a metal rod. He swung it hard, hitting the creature's knee. It barely flinched. Leary raised her hands. The crystal on her chest blazed with light. "Ethan, move." He dove behind the table as a blast of blue energy exploded from her, hitting the leader directly. The ground cracked under the force. The creature roared, falling to one knee. Leary's glow grew brighter and brighter until the whole cabin was filled with light. Ethan shielded his eyes. "Leary, stop, you'll burn yourself out." She looked at him, smiling sadly. "It's okay. Mom showed me how." Then she lifted both hands and the air shook. A wave of blue fire spread out in every direction, swallowing the hunters, the ship, and the forest around them. The red lights blinked and vanished one by one, swallowed by the light. For a moment, there was nothing but silence and brightness and but a peaceful, endless glow. Then everything went dark. When Ethan opened his eyes, the world was quiet again. The cabin was gone and burned down to ashes. Smoke curled up toward the morning sky. He sat up slowly, coughing. The forest around him was scarred but alive. "Leary," he shouted. "Leary!" He searched through the ashes, calling her name again and again, until he saw something glowing faintly under the rubble. It was the breath crystal. Still warm, still glowing blue. He picked it up and a small, soft voice whispered in his mind. Leary's voice. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm with Mama now. The light will protect you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to." Her voice faded gently. "Humans fight because they care. You taught me that." The crystal's glow dimmed but didn't die. Ethan looked toward the sky. The stars were faint in the daylight, but one of them, far, far away, flickered softly like a heartbeat. He whispered, "Rest easy, kid. I'll keep your secret safe." He slipped the crystal into his pocket and turned toward the smoking horizon. Somewhere beyond those trees, beyond the clouds, the real war was coming. But Earth wouldn't face it unprepared. The forest was silent again. The smoke from the battle had drifted away, leaving the sky pale and open. The air smelled like burnt wood and rain. Where Ethan's cabin once stood, only blackened earth and glowing ash remained. He sat on a broken piece of timber, his clothes torn, his face covered with dust and blood. In his hand he held the small blue crystal, the last piece of Leary and her mother. It pulsed faintly, soft and warm, like a heartbeat that refused to die. He turned it in his palm, watching the light shimmer across his fingers. Sometimes he thought he could almost hear her, that soft, childlike voice whispering between each pulse of light. "Don't forget us." Ethan looked up at the sky. "I won't," he said quietly. Days passed. Then weeks, Ethan rebuilt part of the cabin, enough for shelter. The forest began to heal. New leaves sprouted where the ground had burned. The stars returned each night, clear and bright. He tried to live like before, but everything had changed. The silence no longer comforted him. It reminded him of the girl who had come to his door one night, asking for help, the girl who had called him brave, who had believed in something bigger than fear. Sometimes, he would wake up thinking he heard her soft footsteps or her quiet laughter. Sometimes he'd see a flash of blue between the trees and run outside, only to find the forest empty. But he still kept his promise. Every night he sat by the window and spoke softly to the stars. "Leary," he would say, "I'm still here. I haven't forgotten. You said humans and your kind could stand together. Maybe one day someone will hear your mother's message. Maybe one day they'll understand." Then he'd open his hand, look at the glowing crystal and smile sadly. "Until then," he whispered, "I'll keep the light." One morning, months later, the world changed again. Ethan woke to a strange hum, not the cold, heavy sound of the hunters, but something different, softer, warmer. He stepped outside and looked up. In the clear blue sky, a single beam of white light was falling, slow, gentle like a star descending from heaven. It wasn't fire. It was pure, shimmering light. The ground shook slightly as it landed in the field beyond the forest. Ethan ran toward it, his heart pounding. When he reached the clearing, he stopped in awe. In the center of the field stood a silver sphere, smooth and glowing softly. Symbols ran along its surface, the same kind he had seen on Leary's ship. The air around it shimmered faintly. Then a voice came from it, calm, female, and clear. "Human," named Ethan. He froze. "Who's there?" The voice was gentle. "This is the Council of Velara. We received the message from the child of Aaron." Ethan's eyes widened. You mean Larry's message? You heard it? Yes, the voice said. Her light reached us. It carried her mother's truth and your courage. Ethan took a shaky breath. Is Larry alive? There was a soft pause. Her form has changed, but her essence endures. She became one with the energy that saved your world. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He looked down at the blue crystal glowing faintly in his hand. She's still here, he whispered. The voice continued. Because of her, we know the hunters failed. But the danger she spoke of still moves among the stars. You must prepare your people. Ethan frowned. How I'm just one man. Nobody will believe me. The light shimmered brighter. They will. The message will spread. We will help you guide them. Larry's light will lead the way. Ethan looked up at the sphere. You're saying Earth has to join you? Yes, the voice replied. Together we can stop what comes. Alone no world will survive. The sphere began to rise slowly, its light growing stronger. Ethan stepped forward. Wait, what do I tell them? What do I tell my people? The voice answered softly. Tell them the stars remember the kindness of one human who helped a child who wasn't his own. Tell them that hope is still alive. Then the light faded, and the sphere lifted silently into the sky until it became just another star. Ethan stood there long after it was gone, the wind cool against his face. That night, he returned to his rebuilt home and placed the crystal on the table. It glowed brighter than before, filling the room with blue light. He took a deep breath and sat beside it. Looks like your mom was right, he said softly. They heard you. The crystal pulsed gently as if answering him. He smiled. You did it, kid. You saved more than you'll ever know. Weeks later, Ethan went into town for the first time in months. He carried the crystal in a small metal case inside his bag. He didn't tell anyone where he had been or what he had seen. But he began to share the message. He talked to scientists, radio hosts, and researchers online. At first they laughed, thought he was crazy. But then he played them the faint recording from the transmitter, a sound that wasn't human, a signal from the stars that no one could explain. Some ignored him, but others listened. Some began to believe, and slowly, quietly, the story began to spread, not as a legend, but as a question. What if we are not alone? And what if the ones out there need us as much as we need them? A year later, the world looked at the sky differently. Strange signals began appearing in space like faint lights calling back and forth. Astronomers were confused, governments went silent, and for the first time in human history, the stars no longer felt so far away. Ethan watched it all from his porch. He was older now, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes still held the same quiet fire. He held the crystal one last time, feeling its warmth pulse against his skin. I kept the promise, Leary, he said softly. The world is listening now. He placed the crystal in a glass jar on his windowsill where the sunlight touched it every morning. The light inside flickered gently, blue, then silver, then white, like a living heartbeat. That night, as Ethan sat outside looking at the stars, something new appeared in the sky, a slow wave of blue light that shimmered across the horizon. He smiled. Looks like you're still watching. The air around him felt calm. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid. He leaned back, watching as one star grew brighter than the rest. It pulsed once and twice, 3 times, he whispered. Good night, Leary. And as he closed his eyes, the light from the crystal shone through the window, reflecting off his face like a promise that never fades. Because somewhere beyond the endless dark, a little alien girl was still keeping her word, and the stars were whispering back to Earth. Thank you, human.